Just going to share my screen, Declan. You can tell me that you can see it.
Okay. Managing pressure in credit rolls. Yeah, now I can see your full screen with the slides down the side as well. So now, yeah,
Good stuff.
now it's kind of hanging there. It's not. Oh, there it is now. Yeah,
Grant.
yeah, that's all good. Just think, do you want to make me co-host and I can let people in when you're talking?
I can only make you the host. I can't make you the co-host.
Oh, then.
It's something to do with the settings. I think Zoom have changed their settings recently.
Yeah, can't
Should have. Jordan will be in a minute now and he'll just mark down attendance and stuff. Can you change to Jordan? I was wondering why there was 2 Katrina Burns logged in. And I didn't question it. I admitted the second Katrina Byrne as well. That'll tell you, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
I have
technology.
a doppelganger I didn't know about.
Mm.
Now, we'll kick off now in 1 minute. The new one bed and breakfast is Old Town. Oh, that's right, okay. Hi there. Yes, Mary, my name is Magella from Bypass Merchant Services. We do credit card machine. And I've just given them a big call to relieve the money. And we have a very machine here at the moment. I suppose it's a lot cheaper than the other machines, and there's no contract with it. And the card machine itself is free. So it's something that you could try it out even, and if it didn't work out for you, you could come back to us with it. Do you use the machine, Mary? Mm-hmm. Can I ask what machine you use? Can you hear me, Jella? Okay. There's nothing I can do about that. Just 2 seconds, guys. There's somebody looking for the link here, so I'm just going to send that on very quickly. And I'm going to kick off then. And the very same as the rest of the webinars that we've run will be done inside of about 45 minutes, and we'll hang around and see how many people have questions and so on. So now
That's great. Now you're not sharing your screen now.
I'm going to share now. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
grand. Yeah, just to let you know.
Perfect. Yeah. So we are recording already. So
Yeah.
sorry, there's loads of people coming in here. Bear with me, guys. I'm just going to keep an eye on that as well. So look, the idea behind today, this is a little it was a session that I kind of wanted to do, I think, more than anybody, you know, having been in the professional game, not necessarily in the credit game for as long as Declan has been, but certainly I've been, you know, working within a kind of a corporate environment for a long number of years. So you know, recently there's been a massive concentration on the whole idea of keeping your mental health right within the job. You know, we're all grateful to have a job, but life is busier, work is busier, everything is busy, and it's a matter of kind of keeping your head straight and making sure that you're being as successful as you possibly can. And I think this session is something I think every person working in credit can relate to, because the pressure, it's part of the role every single day. So the first little bit of bad news that I have to give to everybody is that with credit comes pressure. And with credit control comes pressure. And that is just the way it is. But, you know, in terms of credit control and how you manage yourself and how you manage yourself within the role, you're expected to protect cash flow. You're expected to maintain customer relationships. You're expected to support sales, satisfy finance, and somehow stay calm in that whole overall environment. So today, what I really wanted to cover off is, you know, that you're not alone, that there, you know, everybody in credit has an element of pressure, that it is simply a part of the job. But to give you a few kind of hints and tips in terms of how you can manage that pressure and make the job a little bit easier, make the job a little bit more enjoyable for yourself. So I suppose the first thing then is, you know, why is that pressure constant? So if we look at what our positions are, so one of the reasons credit roles are so demanding is because you sit between multiple departments and you essentially serve multiple departments. You know, you've got sales, you've got finance, and you've got the customers who ultimately pay our salaries. So we're trying to keep all of these different departments and all of these different individuals happy. So, you know, sales, they want to keep their customers happy. Finance, they want cash in the bank. Customers want more time to pay. They want to, you know, take every little bit that they can. And then your management want to reduce risk. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to plate spin and you're trying to balance all of these elements on a day-to-day basis and maintain yourself under that pressure all day, every day. So the difficult part is that you often carry responsibility for outcomes that you don't fully control. So if you kind of go back to these things, you know, you can't force customers to pay. You simply can't. You can do a really good job as a credit controller, but you can't force anybody to pay. You can't always make or control the commercial decisions of the business. That's done by management. And you can't, certainly can't, particularly in this day and age, we cannot control the economic conditions that we live in between wars and fuel prices and all of these, and the cost of living. All of these different elements are outside factors that we have no control over. So how do we contain ourselves and how do we manage that pressure? You're still expected to manage the result. That's why the pressure in credit isn't occasional. It's constant, it's daily. So you kind of wonder at the end of that part of it, why would any of us go into credit at all? And, you know, a number of us obviously have because we're good at it. So I'm sure in this room now, we've got 33 people who have taken their time out now to log into this session. I'm sure you have all felt days where you feel like you have been pulled in multiple different directions at the same time within the role. You've got a sales guy pulling at you, you've got a customer pulling at you, and then you've got a manager coming down on you at the same time. This is what the job is all about. The pressure is constant. But it's not all bad. You know, you can balance these things as well. So the first thing that you would need to do in order to find a little bit of peace within this role is to change your mindset. So one of the biggest mistakes that credit professionals make is that they feel they need to pick a side. I need to be on the side of the salespeople. I need to be on the side of management. I need to be on the side of the customer. You're not picking a side. If you are picking a side, you pick the side of the company. You have to change that mindset, that collector mindset, to being a commercial decision maker. So what you really need to do is you need to align your brain on the risk and the reality, and you take it on a case by case basis. So you're not against sales. You're not against finance. You're not against any of this. Your role as a good credit controller is to manage the business commercially and protect the business commercially. So if you change that mindset, it will give you more of a peace of mind in terms of the decisions that you make and the impact that you make in your role. So in terms of making those types of decisions, so there's a simple framework for every issue or problem that presents itself from a credit perspective, is that we need to follow a very simple framework of questions. The first is, what's the risk? So you have to evaluate what is the risk that the company is taking in order to follow through on what it is that we want to do. The next thing then is what's the relationship value? So we all know as well on a company and a worldwide basis now with the introduction of AI, with automations, with answering machines and bots and all of that good stuff, the preservation of your relationship with that customer is paramount. You know, customers, people buy from people, so you have to preserve that relationship. So ask yourself, what's the risk? What is the relationship value? And then what is the cash impact? So if you can follow through on those three questions, the answer will present itself to you. So in terms of, how you do this, these three questions, what they do is they remove emotion from the decisions. So communication, early communication is critical, but if we boil all of this down in terms of any good credit controller, you're not the bad guy. You're not the bad guy that you're being painted to be. You are the person bringing clarity to the situation. You're the person who's bringing clarity to the situation. And when you position yourself as the position, of commercial clarity, the conversations with the departments around you will change. So like if there's, the biggest thing is being able to follow this simple framework will help you. It won't give you all of the answers, but it will certainly push you in the right direction of any sorts of problems or challenges that come up during your time as a credit controller. So like, I really want people to remember this. If you remember anything else off this webinar, is that this is something that I want people to remember, is that you are not the bad guy. You are working for the business. You're the person bringing visibility and clarity to risk. When you communicate professionally and commercially, people will respond to you differently. So these are the types of actions that you can take which should help remove the emotion out of what you're doing and bring it down to numbers and bring it down to risk, bring it down to value and bring it down to cash
Yeah,
impact.
big change from a previous time. Just a connection,
Sorry?
but she can't. I'm assuming we're on mute.
Sorry, there was somebody that wasn't on mute there. Now, sorry about that. So the next stage, in terms of making things a little bit easier. So this is something that we come up against again all day, every day in credit roles, and that is handling those difficult conversations. So the pressure and the stress will rise in any company when there are payments that are overdue, when emotions are running high, and then on top of all of that, you've got internal teams that are pushing back against you and pushing back against your decisions. So you've got three practical tactics to try and adopt and try and keep at the back of your mind when you are dealing with all of these different issues that are coming to you. The first one is to stay factual. So you need to remove the emotion out of what you are doing. You have to stay factual, stick to the facts, stick to the dates, the agreements, the balances, and the timelines. That is what your job is. You have to stick to what is in front of you, the black and white. The next thing then is to stop. Pause before you react to somebody, whether they're a member of another department or whether they're a client. Pause before you react. So you don't need to match somebody else's emotion. That's how you lose your control. If somebody has a raised voice, if somebody is speaking faster than they should be, don't match that emotion. You need to pause and reassert yourself, but you don't match that emotion. And then the third thing that you can do is be clear but not aggressive. Now that is quite broad depending on what culture you're coming from and depending on what environment you come from. But being very clear around your facts, so your facts, your dates, your agreements, your balances and your timelines, that gives you the control to be able to have a proper conversation with somebody without losing control and becoming under pressure yourself. So there's a big difference between being direct and being confrontational. And I think we all need to remind ourselves of this at times. So the last bit on this slide I thought was quite relevant as well. So most pressure doesn't come from the situation, it comes from how we respond to it. So the calmer you are, the more control you have over that. So I suppose it's one of the biggest lessons in credit management is, avoiding those difficult conversations. If you stick to your facts, you are taking control. If you pause before reacting, you are taking control. And if you are clear and non-aggressive, you are taking control. Once you take control, you lessen the stress and the pressure on yourself. And as we covered already, that relates back to making a good commercial decision for the business. Okay, so that's handling difficult conversations. Again, something that comes up all the time in credit. So what's in your toolkit? So the one thing that we can say about credit in general, and strive as you might to try and do it, but you can't remove the pressure. You can't remove the pressure. It is a targets game. It's the very same as sales. We all have a target to work towards. The pressure is there depending, the end of month is coming, the targets are there, there's X amount of cash out there. You've got all these people coming in on top of you. That pressure, as I said, the bit of bad news is that pressure will always be there, but you can manage it. If you proactively try doing these different things, you can manage it. So one of the first things that, and I think this is relevant for anybody working in a job, basically, it's not just for credit people, you have to prioritize what actually matters. Now in credit, the cash impact of what you're doing. So you have to prioritize what actually matters to you in your job. So don't concentrate on the noise. We know some accounts deserve more attention than others. So having your accounts prioritized based on their value and based on their cash impact will give you that little bit of control over your ledger and a little bit of control over where you dedicate your time. The second thing then, again, relevant for everybody who's in business in general, is a structure to your day. And I'm sure everybody's heard of the term being a busy fool. An awful lot of people are busy fools in their job. They have a huge amount of work to do, but they have no structure to the day. So they start a little bit of this, they start a little bit of that. Then by the end of their day, nothing is completed. They can't say anything is done. But if you structure your day, have time allocated, planned focus time for your calls, your escalations, your reporting, and your follow-ups. This will give you the structure that you need, and it does something good for the soul to have a structure. If you work within the framework and within a structure, you can make sure that everything that is on your list can get the dedicated time, and it helps then with managing the pressure that you're under because you have a structure to follow. Makes it an awful lot easier on the head. The third thing as well, which I thought was really worth mentioning, is don't carry these conversations home with you. Your partner, your children, they don't need to hear about these heavy conversations that you've had. You need to have these difficult conversations. You need to follow the advice and the framework that we've already covered. Get to the decision, get to the ultimate decision, and then you need to move on. So you have to develop the ability to actually draw a line under the situation and move on. This is super important in credit roles particularly because it's very, very easy to not just carry that conversation, but you carry that emotion and that anger and that sort of pressure, and it will get in on you. You have to develop a technique to shake it off and move on as the decision is made, the conversation has been had, and now we move on to the next thing. The next thing after that as well, and I thought this was really, really worthwhile in terms of mentioning, is escalating early and not late. Don't let the problems get bigger in front of you. So somebody said to me before, is like, bad news early is very manageable. Bad news late becomes a crisis. So,
Right.
bad news, we can all manage bad news. We can decide what action we're going to take. We can concentrate on it and we can get it to the best possible result that we can expect from it. Bad news late that's left to sit there and get worse and fester, that's when you're in crisis mode. and that's just going to kill off all your peace altogether. So if you can spot things that are happening that you need to raise, you escalate it early. So the goal is not to complain about every single account, but if there's patterns changing, if there are certain clients that used to pay on time and now suddenly aren't paying on time, escalate it, point it out, talk about it. This is part of your job, and that's part of the management of the risk part of your job that you manage. And again, escalate early. This entire presentation is about reducing and managing the stress that you're under. So if you can manage to escalate early, you're avoiding problems further down the road. So if you look at your accounts every single day with a keen eye, look for problems before they're there, and then nothing will take you by surprise. So the pressure, again, it's part of the credit management environment. It's part of the environment. Control doesn't come from having less pressure. It comes from handling it better. So you have all these little tools in your toolkit that are there. They're not to tell you how to do the job. What they're to tell you to do is tell you how to conduct yourself professionally. If you concentrate on yourself, that's the only thing that we can control. We can't control problems that happen. We can only control our reaction to those problems. So if you work on these little hints and tips and these practical habits, it will make you a better worker, and the results, you will feel the results because you'll be able to manage that pressure a little bit better. So what managing pressure really means in credit roles, again, this is kind of a summary of a lot of different things. It's pressure in the role because, again, you sit between those multiple departments. So you're answerable to so many different people. Sometimes it feels like we have multiple bosses. But really, you should remember, that you only answer to the business. If you're making the correct, commercially responsible decisions, it's you doing a proper job, and that's you doing a good job. The challenge then is to learn how to not have your priorities competing with one another, but to balance your priorities. So the real skill is balancing competing priorities professionally. So you need to look again at what we mentioned in the last slide. Look at the cash impact of the tasks that you've got. What accounts need my attention and what accounts need my attention now? And it's balancing and making the correct decision with regards to the priorities that you have in front of you. You need to remember difficult conversations. They come up in every job. It is not just in credit management. It is across the board. Difficult conversations are unavoidable, but they can be managed with the right approach. So we talk about not matching that emotion, making sure that you stop yourself before you knee-jerk react to somebody. Concentrate on your facts, concentrate on your balances, your dates, your agreements. That's what your toolkit is. If you've got the facts and you're acting in the best interest of the company, those difficult conversations, once they're managed, they become much easier. And then the last thing then is staying in control. So staying in control, having a structure and not reacting in the moment. Like I could say this, I could talk about this all day long, structure within your day. I think we did a count in the office here recently and there was 8 different forms of communication going at the same time. We had internal messengers, WhatsApp, email, phones, general text messages. There was other LinkedIn messages that were coming in. I mean, it is absolutely... It's ludicrous, the amount of communication avenues that we need to keep an eye on. But if you try and add a little bit of structure to your day and actually sit down, and I would encourage everybody to do that after this webinar, is sit down, write down your priorities and then list them and then allocate time to them and stick to it. You will find that you will be coming out at the end of the day far more accomplished than you do from a day where you feel like you're chasing your tail and you've really done nothing constructive. So it's really just, making sure that you remember these 4 things. Nobody can change overnight, but there are little adjustments that you can make to make sure that you're as effective as you possibly can be. And that's what I suppose that's what ICMT wants to do. We want everybody in credit control to be as effective and as successful as they possibly can be. Sometimes it's not about teaching them how to manage risk. Sometimes it's about, enabling that person to take control of their professional career, take control of their professional day and make the most of it. And I suppose before we finish up then, the last thing is our diploma. We talk about our diploma all the time. If you're interested, get in contact with me. But this is how the diploma will help you stay in control. It'll help you handle pressure with a clear structure and approach. This comes up in the course. We teach people how to do this. We teach people how to manage the people that are pulling out of you, the finance department, your manager is pulling out of you, your customers are all, pulling out of you. You need to be able to manage and balance all of those departments and people with confidence. And that's what we teach you. Dealing with difficult conversations, we give you the techniques to deal with those conversations. But I'm telling you now, if you take up the few points that I gave you earlier on in terms of difficult conversations, don't match their emotion. Stick to the facts and take a breath before you respond. You will find those difficult conversations become an awful lot easier. We will also teach you how to make better decisions through risk awareness and commercial thinking. Credit controllers concentrate so much on getting the money in, getting the money in, getting the money in, and they find it very difficult to come out of the weeds and look a little bit more high level on it. We teach you how to make better decisions and better commercial decisions, which again will help you in your confidence level and help you with managing that pressure. And then the last thing then as well is staying organized. So being organized in this day and age is essential for anybody who's in a job. We've got a lot of remote workers, which has given rise to, like I said, so many different modes of communication. You've got phones hopping, email, instant message, all of these different things going on. You need to be so organized and have a really good structure that you can control your day and make sure that you're managing that pressure. So the last slide then is really just, our contact details. Declan. Declan is the owner of the company, Irish Credit Management Training. Our flagship course is the diploma. And for anybody who is on the call now, you're obviously interested in developing yourself. You're obviously interested in learning. You can contact me at any stage for, the brochure around the diploma. Our next induction is May 16th. And we'd be delighted to have as many of you there as possible. But for the moment, just in the interest of this particular webinar, I will open the floor to questions. If anybody has any questions or any feedback, please go ahead and ask the question. I might actually just stop the recording because I think maybe people might be embarrassed to ask a question. Bear with me. Stop the share and stop the recording.